Hey everybody, it's Nick Dolman here. Today we're going to talk about migrating the standard to enhanced data model in Power Pages. Now, some of you are wondering, why do we want to migrate from the standard to enhanced data model? What is the enhanced data model? Well, if you've been working with Power Apps portals or Power Pages or ADX Studio portals for a long time, you know that all of the metadata that is used to show your website, to define your web pages, web templates, content snippets, all of that great stuff is actually stored as data within Dataverse tables. So what does that mean? That basically means is that when we install or provision a Power Apps portal or a Power Pages website, that it traditionally installed a whole whack of solutions that had those tables, that had those functions, had the portal's management app, the model-driven app that we use to manage that metadata. It would load that into your Dataverse. So you would see a whole bunch of new solutions the very first time that you provisioned a brand new Power Pages website. So that gets a little bit clunky when we add all of those solutions. The other thing you probably notice is that it added a whole whack of tables, and we still see that ADX underscore all of those tables in that standard data model that's part of your Dataverse. So really, you've kind of bloated your Dataverse with a whole bunch of extra stuff. Now, it's all important, it works well, but it's sort of added all of this. Now, with all of this metadata being stored in tables, it gets really hard to move those configurations from one site to another. Now, going forward, we have the enhanced data model. The enhanced data model, it's part of core, it's part of core Dataverse. It will be every new Dataverse environment that you create will now have at least these core Power Pages tables already pre-installed, already ready to go. Microsoft will be able to update these and keep these well maintained. It also means that Dataverse is ready for Power Pages pretty much out of the box. Now, what that also means is we'll still have a lot of those tables, but they're going to be represented as virtual tables. So it's going to make the whole process much more efficient for storing all that metadata for your Power Pages website. Now, the whole migration process that we'll look at today is going to take all of those data that's in that ADX Studio tables. It's going to move it all to those system tables. And once they're in those system tables, it is going to be stored as a JSON format. Now, they're all going to be accessible through those virtual tables. But what does this mean basically? That basically means that we can now move our entire website in solutions using things like pipelines, using Azure DevOps pipelines, using different ways to move your solutions from your dev environment to your production environment to your test environment. So that's really part of the core of the enhanced data model. It will also make things run much more efficiently. It will also reduce the number of solutions and number of tables. So definitely, this is something that you're going to want to eventually do. Like, there's no rush at this point. However, moving from the standard data model to the enhanced data model is a huge bonus. And we're going to look at how to do that today using the tools that Microsoft has provided to us now in public preview. All right, so first off, let's just make things clear. At this point, this is being recorded in late April 2024. This particular feature is still in public preview, meaning it shouldn't be done on production sites. So definitely do not do this on an actual production site. Make a backup, restore to another environment, do it there, or do this on a dev environment. Whatever you're doing, don't attempt this on your production site. All right, that's on you. Now, the first thing, even though if you are doing this on whatever environment, what you want to probably do is make sure you do have a backup. Of course, we could do this in the Power Platform Admin Center. Just quickly create a manual backup. I'm just going to call this pre-convert. And we've created this backup. So we at least have that we can revert to. So we've created this. Now, the other thing I want to do is one thing that is always now turned on by default, but we'll just still double check that. And I do want to point something out. I'm going to go into the details. I am going to go into the Power Pages site here. I do have a Power Pages site set up. I select that. The other thing we're going to need to do is make sure it has the most recent enhancements and updates. It looks like everything is up to date. That's good. If not, it will tell you that you do need to update. It could be the Dataverse base portal, or it could be the template you're using, or it could be some other features if you're using the more enhanced templates. Anyways, make sure you're completely up to date on all your packages there. That's done. Other thing to do is we need to make sure the switch to enhanced data model is turned on. That should be turned on already. However, you may have turned it off, or someone might have turned it off. Now, flipping that switch does not mean that automatically everything's done, because this would make this video very, very short. If it was just a matter of flipping the switch, cool. But it's not the case. Really, all this switch does is basically tells Dataverse the setting is if anybody is going to provision a brand new website to use the enhanced data model. Now, there still might be some templates that have not yet been converted at this time. I think the plan is they're all going to be eventually converted, but if not, even if this is turned on, those templates will still use the standard data model. So just be aware of that. Just to recap, switch won't do the switch, but we do need to have that turned on going forward. So make sure that's turned on. All right, the other thing we need to do is we need to capture the URL because we're going to need this. Basically, I'm now on the Power Pages homepage. I do have my site here. Oh, let's just check out something else. You know me, I like to jump around a little bit. I'm going to go into the details because we're going to want to make sure, and the question might come up, how can you tell if your website is in the standard or enhanced data model? So I'm here in the design studio. I'm in the setup workspace. Going into the site details, we see here the data model is standard. There's a couple other ways to check as well, both within the administration center and using the PAC CLI, which we're about to dive into. But this way we can see this is currently the standard data model. Now, what I was originally going to do, going back to the home page, I'm in the home page here. I'm going to go in that little gear icon up here. We're going to grab the session details, open that up. What we're after is the instance URL, because this is the instance we're going to need. So I'm just going to copy this. Now this is whatever you named it, .crm. Your CRM might be 3, 4 others, depending on what geography you're in. That's good. I've grabbed that. All right, for this, we're going to use the PAC CLI. Now, I like using the PAC CLI within the context of Visual Studio Code for the desktop. So you can use PAC CLI with PowerShell, but however, like I said, I like using Visual Studio Code. If you don't have this installed, there's a lot of other great things you can do with it. So I would recommend downloading that. There are instructions on Microsoft Learn on how to download Visual Studio Code. If you've watched some of my other videos, you'll see that I use Visual Studio Code quite a bit. Now, once we actually have that downloaded, then what we need to do is take a look at the extensions. And then what we're going to want to install is the Power Platform tools. So if you've not got this installed yet, definitely go ahead and do that. Get the latest version. If it's been a while, maybe you're going to need to update that. This is going to install the PAC CLI plus a whole bunch of other tools that are going to enhance Visual Studio Code for desktop for building things within Power Platform. So highly recommend you get this. So once you get this, once you get it updated, then we can move on. So now that we have the Power Platform tools installed, what I'm going to do is run the terminal. I'm going to go to a brand new terminal here. So command line stuff, don't be afraid. This is how we used to roll back in like the early 90s and whatnot. Doing command lines. So basically what we're going to want to do is connect to our Dataverse environment. Now remember, I did capture that URL before. So I'm going to basically go PAC. PAC is the Power Platform tools. Auth is the command that we're doing. And what I want to do is create a new connection. And I am basically telling I'm going to create. I'm going to go -u and I'm going to paste in my URL that I captured earlier. Make that just slightly bigger for y'all to see. So we have this. Basically, PAC auth create. This is using the Power Platform command line interface. I'm going to do this, and then basically it's going to try to connect to my environment. So it's going to prompt me for my password for my credentials. So I will go ahead and do that. It may ask you to do multi-factor authentication. You can tell I've been putting this off. I am going to put this off a little bit longer. However, you may have to use your authenticator app. Of course, by this point, probably most of you are used to that. So you see here, I've created this profile. It's connected to me. It did note that the --URL, because I did do -u, is going to be deprecated soon. Use environment instead. No problem. If it has been deprecated by the point that you see this video, you still can go in those session details. You see the environment. It is a GUID. We could use that instead. Basically, from our perspective today, it really doesn't matter. Now, next thing we're going to do is, again, we're in the command line. We're going to type PAC, which is the Power Platform command line interface tools. We're going to put in Power Pages, because that is the commands that we're going to follow. And then here's a little tip too. If you don't know all these commands, don't worry about it. It's hard to memorize them. If you just type it in without parameters, it's going to kind of yell at you a little bit, but it's going to tell you what our options are. So we see here we have list, download, migrate data model, which we will be using, upload, and bootstrap migrate as well. So I'm just going to go Power Pages, and now I'm going to type list, because what I want to do is see the listing of web pages that are on my environment. So I'm going to do this. And yeah, I have this, just that one website ID. I'm going to capture that GUID. I'm not going to memorize all this. Whoops, that's all good. And then let's just clear out some of this stuff just so we're following along. All right, now what we want to do is we're going to want to actually download the customization report. Basically, we're going to want us to give us an assessment of our data model. Is there anything that we need to address separately outside of doing these steps? So this is our next step. So yeah, I put in that command line. It's basically the Power Platform command line tools using Power Pages, migrate data model. That is our command. We now need to specify the website ID, which I've done here using that GUID. And then the other thing is, I should put a space in here. There I want to do a site customization report path, and I'm just going to pump it to a folder that I've set up on my C drive. All right, so now that we've got that put in, let's give this a shot. All right, so that took only a few minutes. I've sped that up, but basically it's gone through, it's created a report. So in my particular example, it did not generate a report. I'm not sure if this is an issue with just the fact that it is in preview, or there was nothing to report, therefore it didn't create it. So we're going to proceed on migrating the site and just sort of see what fun we can get into it. Again, preview, so we'll see. So here is the command to migrate the data model. I've gone pack, Power Pages, migrate data model, -- website ID. I put in my GUID again. I've typed in -- mode all. There are 3 different modes. There's configuration data, configuration transaction data, or all. Configuration data is just your standard portal metadata. The transactional data is things like multi-form, step, sessions, invites, ads, polls, things that might be a little bit more transactional in nature that you want to capture as part of your migration. Or we could just do it all in one shot. So that's what I picked. That's what I'm going for today. And we're going to run through that process. And then we'll go through. Now you see here I was connected. I've actually run this already. It's checking the migration status. It's doing some valid pre-checks, checking things like this. Again, telling me not to make site customization. So make sure all your other developers are out of the Design Studio or Visual Studio or whatever they're using to build the site. It will download this. It will actually start the migration process. I did get this weird error message about a dependent Power Page component does not exist. Failure trying to associate it with another one. It's a dependency, missing dependency lookup type, primary key lookup. So it looks like it's missing some sort of relationship here. I'll have to investigate that later, see if it impacts anything, but those are the types of things that we might run into while we're migrating our site. And that eventually was completed. It went through, processed a bunch of things, and now it's been completed. Now that it's been done, we can now update the site model version of our site. So that brings us up to our next step. So here, what I'm going to do now that we've run through that migration process, I've cleared the screen. I'm going to do pack, Power Pages, migrate data model, same sort of set of commands. But then we're going to add at the tail end of this, the check migration status. So I'm going to go check migration status, because this could take a while to run and we probably want to see what's going on. So let's do this. And it's telling me the migration status is completed. That's great news. It's completed. Now let's move on to the next step. Next thing we need to do is we want to update the data model version in our portal. What we're going to do is do again, pack, Power Pages, migrate data model, website ID, update data model version -- portal ID. We need to get that portal ID parameter. We're going to actually need to go into our Power Pages site to get that. So I'm going to show you that next. All right, so basically we launched our site. We went to _services about. And basically that is going to take us to like an admin page. You might see more information here if you're signed in as an administrator, but for now, what we're really interested in is this portal ID, which is this GUID that we see here. So we're just going to grab a copy of this and we're going to go back to our terminal. So back in the terminal again, I pasted in that portal ID. I have my website ID, my portal ID, 2 separate things. And now we're going to update the data model version. All right, now if I go back into the setup workspace, I see now my enhanced data model has been turned on. Now our site has been completely moved over. So basically what we're going to want to do is we're going to, of course, go in, test the site, make sure all your functions work, make sure everything is still working. If you have specific plugins that are tied to ADX Studio Tables, if you've modified the ADX Studio Tables, if you are using liquid code that refers to particular ADX, particular things like that, those are the types of things you're going to need to fix up. So you're going to want to go through and test your site thoroughly. However, the cool part is now our site, if everything goes correctly, it should be working fine. So we should have our site perfectly ready up to speed. And of course, the other thing, if we go into solutions now, I have a solution here. If I go add existing and I go site, I now should be able to add my website to a solution and be able to transport that using the regular solution import export process or pipeline, so however I want. So this is the benefit of converting into your enhanced data model. It's just going to help your ALM. Now, of course, there's a few caveats with that, which we'll talk about in another video at another time. But overall, you've gone through the whole process. We've taken a standard data model site. We've gone through the pre-checks. We've updated everything. We've made sure the enhanced data model was turned on. We went through the whole process using the command line interface, and it wasn't that painful, was it? We've gone through everything, and now it's converted over into the enhanced data model for our Power Pages site. If you run into any issues, make sure you give feedback back to Microsoft. Like I said, this is still in preview as of the end of April 2024. They are looking for feedback on this process, and hopefully we can get it solid so we can begin to convert all of those sites on the standard data model over to the new enhanced data model.